What's up, guys, and welcome back for another solo mining episode. And we're gonna be going out and doing just more of the same, more mining, and kind of just chill and just talk about everything. But I want to kind of give you guys an idea of where we're at as far as the stockpile goes. And as you know, right now we're just stockpiling ore for the next foreseeable future. But the process I kind of go through when I'm doing this is whenever we do a lot of mining in an episode, once that episode and that ore has been essentially accounted for in an episode, it all gets sent back to the main where it is just kind of held. We'll give you kind of an idea of kind of like overall what we've kind of like stockpiled. I had a pretty big goal for June to do a considerable amount of ore, but just with a lot of different things going on, I haven't been able to do as much mining as I've wanted to do. So we'll go ahead and look at the main here. And this is everything that we've got up to this point since we actually started actively stockpiling stuff. So we're sitting at about a little over $1 billion in value here, but it's also just kind of interesting to see the different types of stuff that we've got stockpiled as well. So a lot of compressed Veldspar. Obviously our high-sec ore is going to be pretty high. Got a little bit of white glaze in here, even some pristine white glaze. We did some Mercoxis mining. We got Spud main in here, and then we've even got some of the rare ores all kind of hanging out. Argnor Bistock, got the 3 different types of Kernite in here, some Jaspit, and then some of the moon goo silicates and stuff like that kind of hanging out. And all of this is just kind of the byproduct of all of the mining kind of demonstrations we've done in the more recent episodes in this series. But I just kind of wanted to give you guys a good idea of where we're kind of sitting. And I'm going to try to do this at the beginning of every episode. And it's probably every other episode or so, whenever, kind of significantly becomes more, we might take a look back at this stockpile again when we may be like at a 2 billion value or something. So you can kind of see how. And also the reason I'm saving it like this is it starts to give me a good idea of what I need to like kind of come up on, right? So we're going to have to hit some Kernite and some Jaspit and get some more of that low-sec ore just to have like kind of that stack representing in this kind of whatever. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get out and start mining, kind of see what the situation is. A lot of the reasons why we haven't been able to do a whole lot of mining lately, or at least like the past few days, is we've had some pretty bad luck in terms of pirate strongholds kind of being in choice systems and everything. Kind of look around here, see what we got, some Vexers and everything. But yeah, we'll just kind of get everybody out to grid and start taking care of business. All right, we're all set up and everything. I'm essentially made this new nav here at the center, so we're able to actually hit everything in this belt, which will be nice. I generally don't like to maneuver around too much. The Porpoise literally just is going to sit here. I have its fuel bay open so I can monitor everything. I'm not actually even carrying any fuel in the fleet hangar or the actual cargo hold. A lot of my mining sessions have actually been just kind of coming out and just kind of mining until this fuel hangar is done. We did put an MX1005 on this tune here, which helps us a little bit. So 54 seconds, well, because we're on the Porpoise, but 2744 M3 per cycle. So doing pretty good with that. We just kind of have to keep a good eye. Since it's a Hulk, we have to keep a good eye on this. But I will be using the fleet hangar potentially once we actually start getting really close to single cycles kind of filling up and everything, so we don't have too much too much downtime, as it were. A lot of we've still been actively researching BPOs and stuff like that, which a lot of those final percentages, especially for like ship BPOs, tend to be like 10 plus days to finish. So I think that with the amount of ore that we've kind of stockpiled and the time it's taken to do like these initial like 4 BPOs fully researched, I feel pretty confident about being able to sustain through some manufacturing while we kind of research a new set, as it were. I was meant to do this last week, but I still need to go out and pick up a few more BPOs, because the tune that's actually researching that stuff can do like 5 research jobs right now, and she's only utilizing 2 of those slots. So we can potentially go out and get 3 more BPOs and put that to work and utilize those slots. And also, as you probably saw on the main at the beginning of the video, the fully researched BPOs also get stockpiled with the ore, so they're kind of all in one spot for when we need them. Otherwise, everything's going pretty well. And one of the big reasons why I haven't really been concerned too much about doing a whole lot of either low-sec or even like null-sec or a lot of Poshman mining is because a lot of what I'm working on right now is kind of the baseline and getting a lot of high-sec ore stockpiled. And I probably actually won't go and mine in low-sec when it comes down to getting that kind of stuff. I think once we start getting to the point where we need materials that don't come out of high-sec ore, we will be leaning pretty heavily on the rare ore, which will cause us to be a little bit more mobile than we are right now. It's really easy right now at day-to-day mining just to kind of, come out and do a good bulk, a good volume. But in terms of whenever we get to the point where we're switching to rare ore mining, then we will have to kind of monitor the agency, monitor different systems. We have several systems bookmarked already that can get rare ore, so that mapping process has been very valuable in preparations for that, which I just think we'll be able to do a lot more volume by chasing the high-sec rare ores than setting up and trying to do like high volume and like low sec. Now, in terms of doing, Argon Bistot or any sort of like null sec or in volume, it's entirely possible for us to go out there and do high volume there. It's just I don't really like dealing with the bigger rats, and to be really efficient, I usually have like a combat alt out there to just quickly take care of any rats, because I'm not going to sit there and commit, an orca or something out there in null-sec. We'll probably still end up using the Porpoise, but that's kind of down the line. But we might actually get a lot of that stuff into, if we try to go into like reactions and stuff like that, we'll also need to work on planning for moon mining, which we're just going to have to get into, figure out a situation to get kind of a consistent amount of moon ore that's relatively close to our operational area right now. Since we can hit every single rock on this belt, I'm starting at the edges. It doesn't actually really matter if you go here or there, but we are kind of if we do have somebody come on grid or something and they want to beeline towards us, we've seen a good chance of them actually like having to combat the rocks that we're kind of behind. If we clear all this area out, we're just kind of leaving a nice little open area, but it doesn't necessarily matter in the long run. But some days I like going long range first, and then some days I like going short range. But right now the plan is we're going to kind of just sit here and keep everything in the hulk, compress everything into the hulk until we get to the point where and we're going to get there pretty quick, but getting to the point where a single cycle essentially fills us up, which, we want to technically be more like 2 cycles to fill up. And we might end up dropping all this stuff into the fleet hangar, because that's how I transport ore back to the main, is in the Porpoise anyway. The Porpoise aligns really, really fast. We can essentially I usually try to take about 60,000 cubic meters of compressed ore to the main that's to make the trip worthwhile. That's kind of been the strategy, and also kind of like the bookmark, the goal for mining. It's like, well, I want to be able to mine enough in a day that would potentially fill up the Porpoise and justify a trip to dump on the major stockpile on the main. hasn't really been something that we've been able to do for the past few days. We had a couple of good days. It's just, with Pirate Strongholds and also just kind of like working on some other projects and things like that. I've got a lot of other projects I'm trying to start up as well in addition to this series. So I think we're going to essentially treat this as a marathon instead of a sprint. And the main goal for me with this series is to try to go long form for the most part, and nothing like crazy long, but try to do like 40 to 60-minute episodes, and just buckle down and just do a considerable amount of mining, because I find it entertaining to come out here. And also, you probably noticed in past few episodes we were kind of like bouncing around Porpoise and Mackinac, or Porpoise 2 hulks, or Porpoise 3 hulks, or Porpoise 1 hulk, and a lot of it has to do with some days I just felt like having multiple hulks out. But a lot of what I've been doing lately is this setup here, which is Hulk Porpoise, because it's very, very, like, if it's cheaper in terms of, by not using the Orca, we essentially bring our entire operational cost down by like 1.7 billion, which is pretty significant. And that's also just something to really think about in terms of your overall just operational costs, is if you can keep it as cheap as possible and still get a decent amount of ore a day, that's better. We still have the Orca. Haven't been using it a whole lot, and I'm really kind of trying to justify the purposes in keeping it. I think the one big reason I haven't sold or put it in mothballs at this point is I think it'll be useful with moon mining because of compression. It's just whenever I decide where or how I'm going to do moon mining in a more sustainable way, I'll move essentially that Orca down with a Hulk in its maintenance bay, and then all I would essentially have to do on moon mining days is just bring pods down to man those ships. And it seems like a lot of ISK and ships to kind of like float for once a week moon mining. But if we're going to be getting into doing a lot of reactions and stuff like that, we just need to have compression for those moon fracs and be able to get out there and just mine until the pie is done and not lose any time with going and emptying and all that stuff. Alright, just keep the process moving here. Keep everything compressed as needed. Kind of keep targets up. Fuel's doing all right. We've been doing pretty well with mining value to fuel usage. This entire fuel bay is like 2 million in value, as opposed to like what we're able to actually get in ore value for its usage. As you can tell, we're using B2s, so we do have a considerable amount of waste, but I really do like having the sub 60-second cycle time, because it really comes down to just having or getting that ore into that ore hold as fast as possible. But it's probably we've been averaging probably about killing one belt a day. Very rarely will I come out and kill the entire belt in like a single session. It's possible, but it also kind of keeps me on field for quite a while. But on most days where it's kind of more like a marathon, like I said, instead of a sprint, I'll come out in the morning, do a good portion of the belt, and then take a break, and then come back and take and hack away at it some more. And that's been a process that's worked out pretty well for me. A lot of people scoff at high-sec mining, saying, oh, you could go out and do Mercoxis, or you go out and do, insert ore here and make so much more. The thing is like even with Mercoxis, you can mine it out really, really quick, and there's a limit on how much you can do per day until you're at the mercy of waiting for a respawn. Same with like rare ores, right? You can spend a lot of time actually looking for systems and getting to those systems and seeing that it's been already cherry picked, or even if you find a fresh rare ore site, getting a lot of value before having to get back on the road and find another site. You lose a lot of time that way. Whereas with like high-sec ore or high-sec belt mining, it's abundant. It's everywhere. And the idea is just having lasers on as much as possible and doing it and calculating your yield based on always mining, always going. I think in terms of like what I've noticed a lot with like Eve players is like they look at like ISK per hour on paper, and they compare that to like Mercoxis ISK per hour on paper looks great and makes high-sec mining look absolutely atrocious, but run that sim for 4, 5, or 6 hours every single day, and you're going to run out of Mercoxis to mine unless you're going into null-sec systems that you don't necessarily have control over, or you're putting yourself in high-risk situations where you can be, a cycle, maybe even like a cycle or two into a Mercoxis rock before you have like a rat carrier drop on you, or a rat titan, or just neutrals, or whatever the case may be. So the reason I have settled on doing a vast quantity of high-sec mining is because of sustainability, and I think that's actually really important. If I have 10 hours to do for mining, then I'm going to pick something that I can have lasers on for the most amount of that time. If you gave me 10 hours to go mine as much Mercoxis as I possibly could, and if you compare that to doing 10 hours of like high-sec mining, then high-sec mining is going to yield more profit. As long as you're like boosting and stuff like that. If you're like, obviously if you're running just like a single like Mackinac, or if you're not boosting an exhumer, you're gonna have issues, right? Because like the yield difference between unboosted and boosted is so wildly different. Which I just don't let it bother me. Like obviously I have people all the time tell me like, oh well, you're just wasting your time over here in high-sec. I'm like, yeah, maybe, but it's low risk, it's sustainable, and I can do 1 billion or more a week. And probably do like I can probably, if I really went after it, I could probably do 2 billion in compressed ore value a week just hanging out here in high-sec. And for the most part, a lot of miners out there actually don't mine for manufacturing or anything. They literally just mine to sell it to straight ISK. And it's like, do you really even care? It's like, you can go out to null-sec and mine anything out there, and then that's all an inventory estimate out there until you export it, and you pay for export cost, and all that stuff is calculated into play. And then obviously you can sell it to like your corporation as a buyback or whatever, which they're going to take a cut off of JITA for that. So it's like, if you're a miner and you're really only concerned about mining for ISK, and you want to mine as much as possible, then put yourself in a situation where you can do that. And this is the way to do it, as long as you're equipped to do it, right? Like a lot of people are not equipped to do high-sec mining and with a booster alt and things like that. But I think it's just very illogical to assume that high-sec mining is worthless. And I hope that this series kind of illustrates and shows that it's like, well, this guy's he's been high-sec mining, but he does it every single day and does it in like pretty decent amounts of volume, and the obvious value is being achieved there, and it's like and it's relaxing. That's the point. Because I do love going to Poshman and doing spud and potato ore and Rakavine, but it's stressful because you never know when cloaked ship is going to pop up right next to you. And same with, null-sec. You never know if that next rat spawn is going to be a carrier or a titan or a rat dread. You never know if you're going to see a local neutral fleet or a neutral fleet come into your system and start hanging out and causing you problems. You never know. There's always that that constant observation, which can get very exhausting. And I think until somebody has actually done it, until somebody who's actually gone to Parchment and mined like 6 hours straight and realizes how exhausting it is to constantly be watching every single like thing to watch, it just mentally exhausts you. While the value is there, it's still not relaxing. So that's why I've landed here where I'm at. That's why I've landed at high volume, high seg mining. Because, at the end of the day, even if we don't decide to use any of this ore for industry, we're going to still have billions and billions that we've, sucked out of asteroid belts with very, very low risk. So, I know, I'm probably preaching to the choir. The vast majority of people who watch this series probably understand exactly where I'm coming from. But that's how it goes. About 22 million right now. Just kind of hanging out. I don't really have a goal for this session. I kind of wanted to just kind of work on an episode, kind of give you guys kind of an update on how we're doing as far as the stockpile and all that stuff is concerned. And just kind of sit here and hang out. Check and see, we're still doing really well. Like, we've used maybe like 500,000 in heavy water and converted that stuff pretty nicely over to ore value. And also, you probably notice we're not actually kind of cherry picking. There's some days where I'll come out here and just grab like plag or Veldspar. I'll start with like rich plag and then dense Veldspar, and I'll kind of work down and just kind of go and grab all of the plag and Veldspar from a belt and kind of call it a day. But like on sessions like this, I try to just grab everything down the list. Now we're kind of like hitting both little corners here. And what's nice about doing it like this is like the moon, the crescent shape just starts like getting eaten away kind of evenly on both sides. Get this stuff compressed and all that. Also, just to like kind of talk about some of the stuff I've been seeing in like the comment section too, is like talking about the difference between like residue and like the type B2s and type A2s and all that stuff. And the way that I kind of categorize the different types of strip miners and things is, if it's something like high sec ore that is very, very plentiful and it's not hard to find, then yeah, running type B2s with 64% chance at waste is better, because you're going to get it in your ore hold faster, and it's not necessarily like you're burning like a finite amount of resources, right? You're going to burn the belt faster, but then you just go to the next belt. Now, if you're doing rare ore where there is a finite amount, then you might also think about running lower yield with using like ore strip miners, because the faction strip miners are not going to have any waste at all, but they also, the ore strip miners will have a higher range, which will help to kind of keep you from having to move around too much in those rare ore anomalies. You can still run type A2s in the rare ore as well. You're going to look at about 34 to 35 chance at residue there, which isn't too bad. I think probably in the future, when we start focusing more on the rare ore stuff, I probably will take out ore strip miners. The problem is like the ore strip miners will add a considerable amount of cost to your overall operational cost. Running modulated strip miners with crystals is just cheaper. But the other benefit of running like ore strip miners is you don't have to worry about carrying a lot of different crystals, especially when it comes to rare ore mining, because you have to carry 3 or 4 different type of crystals to kind of get the most yield out of all those different ores that are all in one spot. I know people have been asking for me to do like comparison and stuff like that between like strip ones, mods, and ores, but really it just comes down to what your need is. Ores are also really useful in just any type of ore anomaly, whether it be in wormhole space or low-sec or in null-sec, because the rocks in those anomalies tend to be very, very far away from each other, and the less time you have to spend burning to a target, or the less times you have to rely on bookmarking a rock, coming off grid, and then going back to grid to get close to a rock, the better, especially if you're boosting your ship. Because you have to realize, like, every time that you leave grid and you come back, you're essentially triggering another rat spawn. So if you want to not be bothered by like null-sec battleship rats or whatever the case may be, getting to grid, killing that first rat spawn, and then just trying to stay on grid is just easier to kind of be more efficient and things like that. I used to religiously use ores for everything, but then again, we were basically just doing all high-sec or not high-sec, but null-sec mining. The other thing I'll talk about is when it comes to ice harvesters for your exhumer or barge. Tech 2 ice harvesters are just trash. The CPU requirement for those things is just way too much, and to get a decent fit for ice, you pretty much are locked into just using the ore ice harvesters. So I think if you wanted to build up a good arsenal of mining equipment, ore ice harvesters, and I think you kind of want a little of everything when it comes to ore. There are some days where it's like, okay, I don't need range and I don't want waste, so I'll run strip ones, especially if it's a situation where I'm going to be out for multiple hours because I've got a mining alt on another screen kind of doing its thing, and you don't really, or if you're like going off to a certain area that you, I guess like it's an expedition, right, and you don't want to necessarily carry a bunch of crystals with you, then running with strip ones can be beneficial as well. But for a lot of what we've been doing here in high-sec, using B2s means B2, I wouldn't even use B2s probably if you weren't boosting, because the speed difference between B2s and A2s, it is considerable, but you're still going to be over 100 seconds per. But being less than 60-second cycles with B2s is probably, you want to run boosted, I think. I'm pretty much getting away probably from using A2s, because I think it's going to be I think the choice is always going to be, it's like, okay, well, I do want really low cycle time and high yield in plentiful situations like asteroid belts, or do I want no residue and longer range for more finite resources, and I would just go ore strip miners. So I think that's going to be pretty much like the distinction I will make. I used to just only do ore strip miners, because it does take a considerable amount of more training for all of the crystals to do that. Then you have to also carry it all with you. And it was just easier to skill alts into using ore strip miners, because it was just like, okay, I don't have to worry about level 4 of all these processing skills on this alt, which just adds a lot more, preparation work for those alts. But now, since I'm pretty much using this alt exclusively, and she's already got all those skills, then yeah, it's, having the B2s is nice. And I haven't, like I said, I haven't bought any more ore strip miners, because we're not doing anything that would really warrant using them. Especially now, like, we can hit everything on this belt from where we are right now, but if you're not boosting and you have that lower range, it might help a little bit too. But also you kind of become a little bit more of a juicier target when you're rolling with those ore strips. That's just something else you got to kind of keep in mind. Come on, Hornets. And the other thing too is, like, the fact that rats in high sec are just, not a big deal at all helps as well. I mean, even this setup in low sec wouldn't be an issue. You're gonna get destroyer cruisers. These Tech 2 rats. We could technically throw 8 rats at like a cruiser. It'd be, easy day. But null-sec it's a little bit different. The Porpoise has, unless you specifically build or fit the Porpoise, the Porpoise has a really hard time dealing with battleship rats or like any sustained damage from battleships, because it can take those light drones quite a while to take those things down. And also, if you're like sieged out there, you're got that industrial core on and you're taking a beating from like 3 battleships on that Porpoise, it can get pretty rough sometimes. But most of the time, 8 Tech 2 light drones will take care of the battleships pretty well. But the worst case scenario is you'll get 3 battleship rats in null-sec, and it'll just take a while to chew through them. But the absolute worst case scenario is, a rat spawn comes in and it's, a rat titan or a rat carrier or a rat dread. And very rarely it's still possible to get like a rat titan. And I've actually been out in an anomaly with just a skip doing Mercoxis mining, and I've had, because it's not just like the rat carrier that comes with it. Usually comes with like 2 cruisers and whatever to accompany it. But it's gonna like almost immediately newt you out and all kinds of stuff. And this was before they actually made the skiff slower. Like right now, with the current way the skiff is as far as getting off grid, I don't know if it could happen. I managed to get that skip off grid without taking too much damage. It's just, but it was a lot faster back then. That's why I pretty much stopped using a skip altogether. Running a Procure for Mercoxis mining is a really, really cheap alternative. I mean, the cost of a Procure and then the yield for Mercoxis out there is great. You can pay that ship off no time. Takes no time at all. I think probably the best situation but more, I'm always talking about sustainability and efficiency, and same thing goes with like null-sec. If we talk about like a situation in null-sec where you want to do very sustained, efficient mining, usually the setup that I like to go with is like, if I'm gonna, like, let's say I'm gonna exclusively go after Mercoxis, what would the setup look like? Like I said, I'd probably bring a Porpoise. Or not a Porpoise. I'm looking at a Porpoise and I would take a Procure, and then I would have an alt that's in like a Tengu or some sort of like ratting ship sitting on grid as well. And then I would always take the combat ship out to the belt first, clear any rats that might be there, and then bring the Procure out. That way, especially like, and usually I do it with a Tengu. I have an alt in like a Tengu, but like if you get 3 battleships and a Tengu's on grid, you don't even have to worry about taking drones out on your mining ship. That they're going to be dead pretty quick. That way you can focus a lot on mining. And it's really not about the damage. A lot of times you can actually, and I've done this before too, where I've been out with just a Procure by itself, and the drones aren't enough to kill the battleship in a reasonable amount of time. What I'll do is I'll orbit the Mercoxis rock, and I will just literally just tank the damage from the battleship. And what that ends up doing is, since it takes so long to like kill a battleship with like just a single Procure and drones, most of the time you're going to fill up with Mercoxis way before you'll kill that battleship. So I'll just let it kind of hang out and do its thing. But like if it was 3 battleship, if it was a spawn that was literally 3 battleships, you probably wouldn't be able to tank it for the time it takes to fill up that ship with Merc. So you have to kind of always be thinking about what you're able to do in certain situations. Unless you're doing high-tech mining like this, where we just the biggest thing we worry about is keeping our stuff compressed so our lasers don't turn off at the end of cycle. I don't think we're gonna kill the scroll bar here, but we're definitely adding our value. Done about 30. Done about, I can't remember how much. I guess you could look at the beginning of the video. We had a little bit of ore. I think we had probably like what 10 million ore value when we started. So we did about 20 million in about 30-ish minutes. But a lot of that has to do with this scordite. That's what I've noticed a lot too, is whenever I just go out here and grab everything, scordite, pyro, all that, my per hour tends to be a little bit lower. But if I come out here and go specifically for the higher tier of Plag and Veldspar and work my way down and stay only on Veld and Plag, I do a lot better per hour, which is as expected, because you're not necessarily mining or wasting precious cycle time on the lower valued stuff. But yeah, this next coming week, we're going to try to do a lot of sessions like this. I want to try to double the amount of value we have in compressed ore. So over the next few days, we're going to try to do about 1 billion in value. Maybe like the next 4 days, we could do like 250 million a day for like 4 days, and we'll be good to go. That's a pretty achievable number. I mean, that's like 2 or 3 belts. A lot of mining. Be a lot faster with like 2 hulks, but I really want this to be like kind of the normal setup for this series moving forward. This Hulk and Porpoise. Like I said, I'm probably going to repurpose or take the Orca down and set her up to be kind of ready to go for moon mining. That way, on moon mining days, we just kind of take these 2 in their pods and go wherever we gotta go and do moon mining, and then when we're done, come back, and then we'll worry about the logistics for all that, moon goo and stuff, when we have a decent amount to move in one trip, because it's just a pain moving an orca around. Excuse me. But moving an orca around in high-sec is just slow and tedious. Especially like if we don't know the exact distance. We're gotta travel 20-something jumps. I'm not gonna take an orca 20-something jumps to do some moon mining for a few hours and then 20-something jumps back. So we're just gonna have to kind of figure that all out as we start looking more into it. Come on, we got this like wall of pyro and scordite. It's like over here is scordite, pyro, scordite, pyro. So Veldspar here is just, yeah. But, we're going to mine it anyway, because we need it. Because it's going to give us Mexilon. And this stuff right here, technically, we could, when we start doing moon mining, we could technically stop getting pyro, because we're going to get a lot of pyrite and Mexilon from that stuff. But scordite, it's like trit, pyrite. It's better if we just go after just straight Veldspar and get a lot better yield from that stuff. But then also, like, we get Mexilon here as well. So technically, you could just kind of go after the Veldspar Plag. But also just kind of having all the stacks and stuff represented. Because I'm an ore hoarder, as it were. Doing pretty well though for the amount of time we've been out here though. especially since we've not even used almost, a few more cycles. We'll be at, halfway through our fuel. But I think we could probably do like 70 million on a full Porpoise fuel tank. Works out for me. I'd say probably in like another 30 minutes we'd have to dump this this ore into the Porpoise, but I don't think we're gonna go that long on this session. Probably just try to get a little bit more here, size it up a bit. And also, we don't really have, there's not really a time or a day that we have set to start doing industry. So, I'd rather have, 10 or 20 fully researched BPOs. And when we start doing industry, just be able to just start a bunch of jobs. Probably actually like try to have around 10 or so fully researched BPOs and start 10 jobs at a time. So that's going to take a lot. I mean, we're probably still looking at probably another month or so before we can really start doing industry like I want to do it. So another month of even doing stuff like we've already been doing, that's a lot. We're going to have a lot of materials to use for that stuff. But we'll also know a lot better about what we need once we start kind of getting the other 6 BPOs I want to purchase picked out. Then we can know more about what we really need to kind of focus on to facilitate manufacturing of that stuff, which is probably something I'll do tomorrow. Look into different BPOs and stuff. Probably be a lot of the stuff I've manufactured in the past and it's kind of tried and true. Why reinvent the wheel? But also try to keep a good varied amount of different markets. So maybe not be like completely into mining mods or mining ships, but also try to like go with some other types of stuff as well. That is the plan. Compress it all. But I think what we're going to do is we'll probably leave the episode off here. It was a good spot to kind of like leave it. I'm be essentially just kind of keep doing this for another few hours and just kind of stockpile. And what I'll do is at the beginning of every new episode, we'll kind of go over what we've got stockpiled like locally. Because like most of the time I'll get out here in the morning before even like recording anything and do, a trip or two or do a little bit just so that it's a kind of a seize the day a little bit. But I think this is a good stopping spot for today's episode. And that's what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to do one of these episodes per day so we can get you guys can get a good idea of daily progress on everything. But thank you for watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.